All right, I want you to picture something with me. Let's say you're in a Jewish family. It's around the time of Jesus, and you're going to the temple for that once-a-year moment where you and your family bring a sacrifice to God. And so you've got all your supplies for the sacrifice. You've got not just your family, but your extended family, aunts, uncles, grandparents. You've got all of that, and you're making your way several days' travel on foot to Jerusalem, and knowing you're going to be there a couple of days and then several days back. So you've got a lot of supplies with you that also have to be carried and toted down there to Jerusalem. And if you don't know the area, Jerusalem is a little bit like going from here to Denver, say. You got to go up a lot of incline to get to Jerusalem. And because it's on foot, it doesn't just bother your lungs, it's bothering your legs. And your legs are getting sore as you're walking up this incline, and your kids are whining because they're going up the incline, and your breath's getting a little thin because you're going up the incline. And then finally, when you don't think you can take it anymore, you see a bit of Jerusalem peek up over the boundary, over the edge. And it's not just any piece of Jerusalem, it's the high point of Jerusalem, which was the Temple Mount and the temple sitting on top of it at the very peak of Jerusalem. And you see that peeking over the edge, over the horizon, and then you see more and more and more of it. And as you get closer and you get into the city, you begin to smell the smells of the temple. And when I read the Bible, I think about the temple as being a bloody place. It seems like kind of a gross place. I don't think that's really the picture at all. They kept all of that very hygienic, but there was a lot of bread being baked to be weighed before the Lord as an offering. So you're smelling that fresh baked bread. And they were constantly throwing animals for sacrifice on the fire. So it smelled a bit like a barbecue or a steakhouse. And as you're walking up, you're smelling all of that, and you're finally there in Jerusalem. Not just to come to a physical pilgrimage, but a spiritual pilgrimage. You're ascending the mountain physically and metaphorically to be there with God. In fact, in the book of the Jewish culture called that the ascent. And in Psalms 120 to 134, that whole section, those 15 psalms, are called Psalms of Ascent. They would sing those songs to each other, to God, as they caravan their way from wherever they came from, up the ascent, up to Jerusalem. Let me show you just a couple of verses out of that section. Psalm 121 says, I look up to the mountains. Does my strength come from mountains? No, my strength comes from God who made heaven and earth and mountains. And they're saying that as they're climbing the mountains. Psalm 122, I was overjoyed when they said, let's go up to the house of the Lord. Now at last we stand here inside the very gates of Jerusalem. Psalm 122, for the sake of the house of our God, I'll do my very best for you. He's writing this from inside the temple area. Psalm 123, I look up to you, heaven-dwelling God, look up to you for help. I want you to notice that all of these references have a picture of ascending. They're looking up, not just physically at the surroundings, but metaphorically to God. But also there's a sense of asking God for things, also a sense of crying out to God for help. Psalm 121 says, the Lord himself watches over you. The Lord stands beside you as your protective shade. They're crying up to God. Psalm 124, if the Lord had not been on our side when people attacked us, they would have swallowed us alive when their anger flared against us. Psalm 126, when the Lord brought back his exiles to Jerusalem, it was like a dream. We were filled with laughter and we sang for joy. And the other nations said, what amazing things the Lord has done for them. Yes, the Lord has done amazing things for us. What joy. Psalms of Ascent had a sense of looking up. Psalms of Ascent had a sense of asking God for things, begging God for help. But Psalms of Ascent also had a heavy dosage. You see that in there if you read. A heavy dosage of thanks to God. Not just a general thanks like, God, thanks for being God. Thanks for my family. But specific things. They were thanking God for events in their past. Thanking God for times when he showed up and they didn't think he was going to. Or they knew if he didn't, it was all going to be for naught. Specific things of thanks to God. Specific memories, ways that God came through for them. And today, I think we're having a Song of Ascent type moment. Today for us marks 20 years as a church. So we come here together, and you likely didn't drive up a hill to get here. I don't know where you could come up from. We're down kind of in a hole in this building. You went down a hill to get to us. But we're still ascending up before God. We're still doing the same thing, calling out to God for his help for the things ahead, but also thanking him specifically for things that he's done in our past. And so I'd like us to commemorate the many things that God has done for us over the last 20 years. One verse I'd like to add that's not on your screen, Psalm 118:23 says, the Lord has done this, and it is marvelous in our eyes. And getting that order right really makes sense. It's the Lord has done this, and it's marvelous in our eyes. Sometimes in churches we think we have done this, and I hope it's marvelous to God. I hope he's pleased with it. That's not the right idea at all. The Lord has done this, and it's marvelous in our eyes. And we're going to honor him today by acknowledging what he's done. To organize our minds around that, I want to divide the history of the church up into 3 distinct periods of time. I'm calling them chapters. So the first is the time in Spring Hill Elementary, about 10 years of time. The second is in the phase 1 of this building where the kids are all at now. And then now today here in chapter 3 in this part of the building. I'm saying that not because time matters, not because buildings matter. It's just to organize our thoughts around those moments. There's also going to be some audience participation today. I don't always ask for audience participation, but I'm asking for it today. So I'm going to need you to help me out, and you'll get the cues on that. I figure today's the day I can ask for anything, right? So I'm going to ask for audience participation. Next week, you can ignore me. But today, I'm going to get some audience participation, all right? So in March 3rd, 2003 is when I came on staff officially at WellSpring. And from then until October 19th, we worked like crazy. We prayed like crazy. I think we were crazy because we really thought that God was going to help us launch a church from nothing. I remember a few years after we started, somebody asking me, what would have you done had the church not made it? Because like 80% of churches don't make it when they launch. And I didn't know that when we started, which is probably helpful. But I realized for the first time that I'd never really thought about it. I'd never considered it, which maybe was faithful, probably just naive. But I didn't have a plan B. I didn't have a fallback. I had 2 young kids to feed. I never even thought about it. I didn't really have a plan. I just knew God was going to make it work. We wanted to get to 50 people. We've been told if we get to 50, you can start a church with 50 people. So we recruited wherever we went over those 6 months, getting people. I had 2 little girls at the time, Lauren and Emily, and I would often take them to McDonald's Playland, the one still there in front of Food Line. It was there 20 years ago, and I would take them there all the time. Not because I loved McDonald's, I hated McDonald's. Not because I was a good dad. That wasn't true. I took them. I was recruiting. I needed to find somebody to come to this church that we're going to start. I needed help. And so I was recruiting often. We rented a little office space down from Papa John's in the Donut Palace. We rented Spring Hill Elementary School starting in October. We raised some money, bought some stuff. And after lots and lots of planning, we were about ready to go. But then we did something really important, I think, looking back. And this is one of the things I think we should have done before now. It's a regret I have of our church. But we took the 4 weeks of September and we devoted it to the community. So what we did, we had the building at Spring Hill Elementary reserved starting in October. So in September, we would meet on Sunday mornings, our little 50 group of us, and that counts kids and all. So some of them were in diapers of the 50, but we had 50, and we'd count all of them, and they would come together in those mornings, and we would pray together, and then we'd walk into the neighborhoods and just pray over the neighborhoods. And we would meet people as we were out and about. And we said we weren't trying to connect with people who were already tied to a church. We're trying to start a church for people who weren't tied to a church. So we figured if you're home on Sunday morning, you probably weren't tied to a church. We'd love to meet you. And so we would walk through the neighborhoods and talk to people. And I begged our team. I said, please do not knock on doors. They were excited. I was excited. We were excited. Like, please contain yourself. Don't knock on doors. No one likes that. I said, they won't like you if you do that. They won't like me and Jesus if you do that. Please do not knock on a door on Sunday morning. No one wants that. But if you see them walking their dog or getting the mail or working in their yard, say hi. Let them know what we're doing. Let them know why we're doing what we're doing. Let them know we're starting a church. And just connect with them. So we did. And we kept saying, we ought to do that more often once we start. And we haven't for 20 years. But we're going to change that. We're going to be repeating that as a church on November the 12th. So as part of this 20-year anniversary celebration, on November the 12th, we're going to have a very short service. We'll tell you more about it later. And then we're going to disperse from there, and we're going to have multiple locations. So it won't all be here. If you live like in Columbia, we'll have a spot in Columbia as well. We're going to go to several locations, have a short worship service together, and then we're going to walk in the neighborhoods and do the same thing we did back 20 years ago, where we pray for our neighbors, we meet people, pray for them, find out what we do. We will not knock on doors. But we'll do all of those things. And this time it won't be a couple of dozen people. We'll have hundreds of people doing that. So we're going to pray big that God does something cool with that. Then on October 19th, WellSpring opened its doors. with 257 people. Now, many of them were well-wishers. I had family in who weren't planning to commute from Indiana. I had friends that weren't planning to leave their churches, so a lot of them didn't come back. But we were thankful to get started and thankful that God used that little group to get us going 20 years ago. I'd like to introduce you, as part of today, and this month, we're going to introduce you to several people. I'd like to introduce you to two little girls who are long-term parts of our church family, but they were not at our church on that day. Bella Lomas and Katie Curtis. I say they weren't a part of WellSpring in 2003, not because they weren't committed, they weren't alive yet. So they weren't part of our church just yet. And yet they represent a big chunk of what it means to be and do WellSpring as we do. They each have started their first year at Johnson University, preparing to be a children's pastor and a worship pastor. Katie was on our stage helping lead us today in worship. And I think their story, this video, tells us a lot about what we do as a church. So take a second to watch this.
Hi, my name's Bella, and my name is Katie. I've been going to WellSpring for about 11 years. I've been going to WellSpring for about 14. I'm at Johnson University studying Children and Family Ministries. I am studying worship leadership. When I was at WellSpring, I would serve in the children's ministry area, and I'd help teach them and help them follow Jesus, and it helped me grow my love for teaching kids how to follow Jesus from a young age. When I was at WellSpring, I served on a lot of different teams. I did worship team, I did children's, I also served on student leadership and the youth group. And I really just came to know how loving our God is, and the people in WellSpring showed me what a good church should look like and what family should look like within the church. And everybody there really just kind of inspired me to want to be more like Jesus and to be more like them. And that's why I'm here now. When I was in middle school and high school, I was part of the youth too, and those years were probably the most impactful years of my life. They helped me get to where I am now. And if I was in youth group or at WellSpring, I definitely would not be here right now. I was in the youth group from 6th grade to senior year, there through all of it, and everybody there just really had a big impact on me, especially when Rob came on staff. He really poured into me both in a worship sense, since he was a worship minister at one point, and in a youth group sense. Just kind of showing me what that's supposed to look like. Being a part of the youth group, that was my happy place. That was my safe place. And being a part of the youth group, we got to go to CI Live, which was always my favorite week of the year. And we had one CIY trip where we went to Lee University, and we were sitting in there with all of the worship team that was there that week. And I started thinking, and I realized that worship was just the place that I was meant to be, and it was what I was meant to pursue. And the people at WellSpring really just came along beside me in that and really encouraged me and got me more involved, and they are the reason why I'm here now. WellSpring has taught me that community is a big factor in learning about God and the love of God, because they shouldn't show the love of Jesus and the light that, the salt and the light that Jesus tells us to be. Yeah, WellSpring just really showed me how people really can live their life like Jesus, and they showed me how I want to be and how I'm looking for in a church. If you're a student at WellSpring, I want to encourage you to reach out to people that you usually wouldn't. Do something that might that isn't in your specific comfort zone, because you never know what lifelong friends you could have, what experiences you could have. A piece of advice that I would give for anybody starting out in the youth group would be to go to the events. Go to Wednesday nights, go on Sundays if you can, go on all the trips, go on CIY, go on middle school camp, because God works through every day, and he works through those events, but also you can really see him work in those moments when you are intentionally trying to connect with him. And those are the times that I've had my most intimate moments with God, has been going on those trips and connecting with people, and also connect with your leaders. They love you, and they want to see you be happy and to connect with the Lord, and They will walk with you through every step, and they will help you to be able to find friends and find community in your youth group. And yeah, WellSpring students is amazing, and I miss it every single day, but they really prepare you for life, and I just really recommend getting in there and staying and really finding the value in it.
Now, we're sharing their story not just because they're great young ladies. They are. We're sharing their story because they're a product of so many of your investments. So many of you have given your time and your energy and your prayers to help not just these two, but other students and children find and follow after Jesus. You teach them the Bible. You point them to Jesus. You love them wholeheartedly. And now God is preparing to launch these two into a life of ministry. We say it often, but I'd be remiss not to say it right here. Our children's ministry is not childcare so that you can have a free moment without your kids. It does that, but it's much more than that. Our ministry to teens is not just fun and games and pizza. It is all of those things, but it's so much more than that. We're, as a church, discipling our most important commodity. We're preparing them for a life of ministry and service, whether it be in a church context like these two are getting ready for, or whether it be in the business world or in the classroom. We're preparing them to be ministers into the world. Proverbs 22, verse 6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." And I just want to ask, if you have ever, in the 20 years, invested your time in children's ministry or student ministry, would you please stand up so we can honor you for the work that you've done? Would you stand up right here? Some of you, more than that. Come on, there you go, there you go. Absolutely. You are part of the training team. You're part of training them up in the way they should go. God gets all the glory for what happens here, but we want to honor you for what you've done. So thank you for doing just that. Chapter 1 represents our time at Spring Hill Elementary School. You know, I have a lot of memories from Spring Hill Elementary. I remember, so I was talking in between services to somebody who was there, part of the setup team in those days, about the blue tape we used to put on the classroom floors to mark out the chairs. There's probably about 3 of you that remember that. Anybody remember the blue tape? Just show of hands, 3 of you remember the blue tape? More than 3, my goodness. That was a wild, ask one of them that had their hand up about the blue tape. The YMCA used that building, so they would have an after-school program, and during the summers they were there all the time. And I don't want to say it ugly, but they often wouldn't clean up their messes after they were gone. Do you remember, those of you who are with us, do you remember walking into church and seeing piles of dirty lost and found down the hallway as you walked into nothing like little boys' dirty underwear to say, welcome to church, welcome to Jesus. And that's what we'd have in those moments. You get in the sanctuary, which was also known as the cafeteria, and you had these harsh fluorescent lights, and we had tables stacked up to divide off the room, and the smell of tater tots wafting in the air. It just, you know, going to church at Spring Hill Elementary just wasn't easy. Wasn't easy. I saw a quote recently that I think speaks to this group that was there during that time. It says, "It's on their shoulders that we stand today. It's on their foundation that we'll build tomorrow." And if you attended WellSpring during chapter 1, during the school, would you please stand up so we can honor you for that? Would you please stand? Yeah, a lot of you. You keep standing a second. You guys, I just want to look at, you guys are all my friends, every one of you. We've been family together for 10, 15, 20 years. And it means a lot that you're here with us doing this together. It means a lot that you trusted this crazy dream we've all had for these years. And I just want to say thank you for what you do. It means a lot. Go ahead and grab a seat. Thank you. It's going to be a long day. My memories of the school aren't those things, you know, the silly things, the dirty blue tape and the piles of dirty underwear and all those kind of things. I mean, I remember that stuff, but that's not what I remember. I remember eating donuts in the lobby. You know, we had donuts every week. We have donuts today in honor of that time, so that you can all be part of that experience. We used to have name tags that people would put on, and the kids at the end of service would put it on down their arm. Remember when the kids would stick the name tags down their arm? This is my daughter, Lauren. My family was all in, which is great. And it's in that school that we formed some of the values, many of the values I think we cherish as a church today, some of the things that I think make us unique as a church today. I remember having Spring Hill Elementary School teachers tell us, Christian men and women who taught in the school, they would tell us when they'd come in on Monday morning, the school would feel different, us having been there, because they hadn't had a church there before for years. I remember one precious teacher, I don't remember her name, maybe Kitty will tell me later, but she was just very outspoken about her faith, and she would tell me, she said, when I come in on Monday morning, it feels like God's been there. And he had. We were doing church together. One of the teachers that taught at Spring Hill Elementary during that season was a lady named Miss Sokol, and they became part of our church, and I'd like them to tell your story.
We've been here almost 10 years. Got here. Our first Sunday at WellSpring was WellSpring's last Sunday at Spring Hill Grade School, elementary school. All right.
It's a pretty cool story, though. I had retired. I taught at Spring Hill Elementary, and I had retired that year, and Dave and I had talked about looking at other churches, and we had been attending one in Columbia, and I said, let's go visit that church. I've heard such good things about it. And so we went, and the first person that walked up to me was Kelly Garrison, and she introduced herself, and she's never forgotten my name. But I just told her, I said, I'll just be honest. I taught here, and I just am not excited about going to a church that meets in a school because you can't do things at other times during the week. And she said, well, good. Come help us move Saturday. We'll be in our new building next Sunday. And we've been here ever since.
My best memory, my favorite memory probably would be the retreat. I had never been on a retreat before, but 2019 retreat was just great. It changed my life. It really did. Really impacted my life. I mean, we had some great speakers that year, that week, and that weekend, I should say. I really met Jesus that weekend, and it was. It's just a good memory. I always remember that.
Well, I have a really good memory in that I grew up in a, what would you say, a religion that didn't believe in, didn't baptize. We christened. And so I was christened as a baby, and when I joined that church, I did not have to be christened again, just took an oath. But one of our pastors here said, I really would like for you to be baptized. And I said, why do I need to be baptized, you know? So I went to a class, and I'm very thankful. It was very meaningful when I did decide to get baptized. What I love about WellSpring is there's so much. I had wanted to be more involved, and it was just hard to get involved in other churches. It was so formal, and here, as soon as I said I wanted to be involved, you know, it was so much to do. You could choose, and you didn't have to do it forever, and a lot of different things to do. It might be serving outside the church in the community. It might be serving in the church. Another thing I love about this church is that we have from infants to youth and adults and young adults, and then older people like us. Just all ages, and I think that represents a good church when you see all ages.
I think it's, I've never felt like I was really a part of a church. I just went to a church, you know, before, and it's just a good feeling every time I come here. It's like it's my church. It's not like...
It's really like your home.
Yeah.
I told Dave one time, I said it feels like, I remember the feeling of when I was off living away from home, and then when you would go home, it was such a good feeling, and it's kind of how it is here. It's like you feel at home every time you walk in.
Yeah, I've never felt like, I couldn't really say that I ever look forward to Sunday, but I do now. You know, it's like we've been here, like I say, 10 years, and it's just a good place to be.
So that kicks into chapter 2, and that represents the time of the building where the kids meet now. We were in here several years. And if you were a part of us then, we were so excited to get in this building. I mean, things y'all take for granted. I feel like so old when I say this, but things y'all take for granted that we just didn't have in the school. They were all new to, like, clean bathrooms. It shouldn't be an exciting thing, but we were thrilled to get a bathroom that was clean. We're excited about that. Or lights that were intentional, or chairs that weren't hard metal. We were just so excited about all the little things. Sometimes I've said to the staff who've come on since then, like, y'all don't understand. Like, you need to come back and get a picture when they want to upgrade this or that. Like, we can do this. It's really, we've got it pretty good these days. And two big events historically that happened during that season. First was the Academy at WellSpring was launched. When we opened that building, that side of the building, before we ever launched as a church in the building, we launched the preschool in the building. And I just want to ask if you're on the team now or have been on the team at TAWS, a teacher, director, would you please stand so that we could say thank you to you for what you do? A few of you? Yeah. To all of our current, keep standing a second, to all of our current and former directors, Christy, Kendra, Katie, Stephanie, thank you for what you do. To the teachers and the aides, thank you for what you do. I just got to ask, I did this first service as well, if you've had a child or a grandchild in the academy, would you please stand up for just a minute? Yeah, that's huge, huge. Now, both of you keep standing unless this is not you. If the third question is not you, you can sit down, but otherwise keep standing. If you began attending WellSpring because you had a child or grandchild at TAWS, would you keep standing up? There's a lot of you. Yeah. Thank you to all of you guys for the ministry you do. We're so grateful for that. You guys can have a seat. The second big historical event, of course, that we don't like to talk about that happened in the first phase was COVID-19. We were in the middle of building this expansion when the whole world shut down. And I thought I had lost a lot of hair during the first phase, which I had, but building during COVID is no picnic. And so I've aged a ton during that time, I'm sure a lot of us have. We just didn't know what would happen. I mean, that was true for everybody, every situation, but we didn't know, would people keep giving towards a building that we couldn't use? Like, that didn't make a lot of sense. Would people keep continuing to sacrifice financially, like so many of you have, while you're watching a service from home? Like, that was just, there's so many unknowns that we just didn't know what would happen, and what would be our church once that was all over. Would people flock back, or would it take a long time? And we just didn't know any of those things. I think WellSpring was such an anomaly. So many of us continued to give, continued to sacrifice, continued to pray, even while we were building a building we couldn't occupy. I mean, some of you have just now begun to be part of the building over the last several months that you were praying for years, but until recently, because of the virus, you couldn't be back. And I just need to say thank you to the faithfulness of our church through that. I also need to say you were led during that season, and honestly during every season of the church, every chapter that we've talked about, by an elder team and a staff team, a financial team that's filled with godly men and women who love the Lord, love this church, enough to give hours and hours, unbelievable amounts of time that you don't even know, to the ministry, blood, sweat, and tears to the church. And we don't thank them enough as a church. And I take responsibility for that. I don't thank them enough. And today won't fix that, certainly, for all the time they've given. But I'd like it if you would help me try to fix that a little bit. So I want to ask, if you serve now or have ever served in the 20 years on WellSpring's elder team, staff, or financial team, would you please stand up so that we can say thank you to you? There are a few of you. Yeah, for sure. I want to say especially to the online group, but you can help me in just a second if you will. We have several staff out today, either because of family situations or sickness. Sickness has kind of ravaged our crew the last couple of days. So Tracy, Chris, Keith, Karen are all sick or dealing with family situations today. And we want to say thank you to them as well. They haven't been here, even though they planned a lot of the things happening, they can't be here. And I want to say, just personally, because we don't do that probably enough either, My wife, Amy, has probably given more to this church than anybody knows, and more, including me, probably than anybody here today. And she came down sick yesterday, so she's not here, even though she planned a lot of what's happening today. She's not going to be here, and she is watching. And I'd like if you would honor her and thank her for what she does. Thank you. Galatians chapter 6, verse 9 says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, because at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." And I just want to thank you to all the leaders, all of our staff, our elders, finance team, for not giving up, because God is reaping a great result through all of that. One family that kind of split chapter 2 and 3, he began to come during chapter 2, and then his now wife began to come during chapter 3, and they met in chapter 3, is the Witts. And I want to introduce you to them. The service is a big part of their story. Service at WellSpring, service together, and we want to take a minute to let them explain that.
My most favorite memory of WellSpring is going on the missions trip to Puerto Rico. That was a defining moment for me in my faith, and just a big high point in my time at WellSpring.
I would say that one of my favorite memories at WellSpring is just the first time I really felt that true sense of community, and getting to the first time that I served at the well was such a cool experience, and then just from there being able to create friendships and find a way to get involved. Those were definitely some highlights.
I think that WellSpring was the first place that I learned how to act out my faith and really live my faith. And I think that serving has become a big part of my life since coming to WellSpring. I didn't know I had that calling until coming here, and it's been a big thing for me in learning more about myself and my faith and how to demonstrate that out into the community. And service has just become a big part of who I am.
It's just tenfold. I think from the moment I first came to WellSpring and for the first time understood what it meant to get connected and to get plugged in. I didn't know what that looked like, or if I was capable of experiencing that. And so just my faith walk alone has been eye-opening here, and to just it just feels like home. There's no better way to say it. There's just the ministry here and the open arms. Amy and Andy were a part of our wedding, and it's so full circle. And so so grateful.
WellSpring is where I've discovered community. I think for so many years and living down here, I was kind of the black sheep of my family, moving from Knoxville and being 200 miles away from any sort of family or community that I grew up with. But I found that here, and I found a home. And I think that WellSpring and Spring Hill are the places where I discovered my home. And not to go even further, but WellSpring's where I met my best friend. WellSpring's where I met my wife. Sitting on the third row, and in our life group. And it's such a big community. I think for me, I learned how to pray at WellSpring, and I'll forever be grateful of Andy's words and what he said sitting in a booth at Grecian Pizza one day. And he just communicated with me that God already knows what you've got on your heart, what you've got on your mind, what you're going to say. And so just have a conversation with him. And I think that since that moment, I've been having conversations with God every day, and with my wife now. And I think that, it's just that element of bringing God into everything. And, for so long, I regarded prayer as this just ritual. And it needed to be a certain way, and it needed to be perfect, and it needed to be rehearsed. And I think that Andy's words broke down all of that for me, and it's really changed my prayer life. And I think that, with that fence coming down, that has really opened the door for us to pray, and, not just meal times, but all through the course of the day, going into meetings and being with each other, and when we're experiencing things as a couple. I think that it's really changed how I pray.
I think WellSpring is going to influence, so many generations in that. I think about the residents of WellSpring and just what a cool thing it is to see young people with such a bright future, and how we just can continue to have an impact there, and create friendships. And it's given us the opportunity to pay it forward, which is so cool and humbling. And we just want to keep being a part of something like that, keep spreading God's love.
And now we've gotten to chapter 3. Now, I don't want to confuse anybody with this next question, but if you ever attended WellSpring during chapter 3, I'd like to ask you to stand a second. This shouldn't be complicated. That's all of you. You're here right now. Just go ahead and stand up a second. Some of you were confused by that question. That shouldn't have been that tricky. Here's the thing. I want you to know, I want you to stand because I want you to not feel out of sorts today. Today's not a day where you're on the outside looking back at memories you weren't part of, inside jokes you didn't know. That's not the point. I want you to know the memories that happened, but I want you to know you're going to be a part of making the next ones going forward. Because you're going to be able, going forward, to remember the time we had our 20th anniversary together, and we had a big party that afternoon to celebrate. And I remember the time that we built 3 houses in the parking lot as a family together and gave them to families in need. You'll remember the time we dismissed service early to pray through the community and walk and meet people. You'll remember the time that we met together and helped to release a bunch of kids from poverty in the name of Jesus together. You'll have poignant memories together, because even though you weren't there then, you're here now. And here's the thing. I don't know how long the chapters God's writing, but it's not a 3-chapter book. It's a longer story than that. I don't know if it'll be 10 years, 15 years, 10, 15 chapters. I don't know how many chapters it's going to be, but it's longer than 3, and you're part of it starting right now. You guys can have a seat just a second. I'll probably be in heaven when we get to the end of the writing. I don't know how long that'll be. I just know it's going to be a lot more than 3. I was talking to my friend Doug last week after service, and he said, sign me up for another 20. I want to be here at the next 20-year anniversary. And I said, me too, Doug. And then it hit me, I'm going to be 71 then. And I told him, I said, Doug, I'll be 71 then. He's a little bit older than me. And I said, we're going to be like those 2 old guys in the Muppets who are pointing at the young guys. Rah, rah, rah. That's going to be me at our next 20-year anniversary, griping and waving at the young folk doing their thing. And then I met I saw a little girl that always is, she's like my president of my fan club, and she always comes out and gives me a hug. And it hit me as I was talking to her. I said, now, how old are you again? She said, 7. And it hit me. I said, our next 20-year anniversary, you're going to be 27. And I about gave her mama a stroke, which wasn't really what I was intended to do. But it just gives you a picture of what's coming together. Now, I want to wrap this up by making 2 quick points, and then we're going to do something we've never done in 20 years. You're going to be here for the first time we've ever done it in 20 years, which is not weird. Maybe, I don't know. It's weird for a lot of churches that this is the first time we've done it, I think. Point number 1, I had our team research this a little bit. Over the last 20 years, WellSpring has given as a church to causes outside of our building. So things like the Well or Jetpacks or National Rescue Mission or Problem Pregnancy Center, we have given to those types of causes over $1.2 million as a group, as a family. Yeah. I mean, we've given to missions in Africa, we've given to missions in Asia, we've given to missions in Central and South America, all over Spring Hill, feeding kids all over the community in Murray County. All that has been done by you guys. We've done that together as a family. And so I just want to ask, if you've ever given of your time or money or energy or prayers to an organization outside of these walls through WellSpring, you've given to the Well or to Jetpack, you've given of your time, you've given of your money, you've prayed for them, would you please stand up to give us a picture of what's happened here? Would you just stand and join us in that? Yeah, for sure. Matthew 5 says, you are the salt of the earth and the light of the world, and you've been that. Thank you for being that. Second point is our team researched and found that over the last 20 years, we've had 530 baptisms as a church. That's a big church by itself, just that number. Yeah. This was the point that got me teary last time, so I'm just going to do it again. If you were baptized at WellSpring, would you please stand up a minute? Would you stay standing a second? If your faith has grown substantially because your connection to this spiritual family during the last 20 years at WellSpring, would you please stand and join them? Luke 15:10 says, there's joy in the presence of God's angels when even one sinner repents. And that's the truth. And I want to say thank you for what you do to make WellSpring what it is and to help sinners like me repent as well. You know, when someone does something well on a court or a field or a stage, we all applaud. It's what we do in America, in our culture. And I think from what we just saw, God has done some really good things. And you don't think about applauding for God, but I think he deserves that. Would you join me in thanking God for what he's done? For sure. All right, now we're going to do something we've never done in the history of WellSpring, and we'll wrap up with this. We're going to take our first congregational vote. You're here for that. A lot of churches, if you grew up in churches, they took congregational votes, what song to sing next week. We've never done that in our history. By the way, if you didn't know, the reason we don't vote as a church, the only vote you find in the Bible, it's really more American than biblical. You don't see it in the Bible. The only vote you see in the Bible is when Paul in the book of Acts told the crowd that God said they shouldn't sail, but it says the majority said we should, and they did sail, and they were shipwrecked. So we don't vote. Like that's not something we do. So for 20 years, we've not had a single congregational vote. Lots of decisions made by lots of people. This is not a dictatorship. Lots of leaders, lots of discussions, lots of decisions by lots of leaders, but no congregational votes until now. Today's going to be our first one. And there's 3 questions on the ballot. So I'm going to give you each of them, and then we'll have a chance for a show of hands to vote. Question number 1, will you commit that our future will exceed our past? Cal Jernigan says, when your memories exceed your dreams, your life is over. I would say to you, God has done some great things over the last 20 years. We've had some wonderful memories, but now is not the time to shrink back. Now is not the time to rest on our laurels. Now is the time to move forward so that the next 20 years has more impact for God than the last 20 have. So let's vote. Show of hands. How many believe our future should exceed our past? I think that passes. We'll do that together. Question number 2. Will you commit to never let WellSpring be about one person? And let me be specific about what I'm talking about here. The 2 most likely candidates for this question is me and you. And I will fight to never let WellSpring be all about me. It's never been that way in 20 years. It's not going to be that way starting now. I'll fight to never let WellSpring be all about me if you'll fight to never let WellSpring be all about you. So let's have a show of hands. How many vote and agree that WellSpring should never be about one person? That's right. We'll do that together. Question number 3. Will you agree to never let anything get in the way of helping people follow Jesus? You know, Ephesians 3:20 says God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us, in the church. And Jesus made clear in Luke 15 that when God has something of value that he's lost, a person has been lost, he's unwilling for anything to stand in the way. So he paints a picture of a farmer leaving his farm and all of his sheep to find the one that went away, or a widow turning her house upside down to find the one coin, or a heartbroken father watching the horizon every day. And that's the picture of God looking for those that he's lost. God's unwilling that anything should stand in the way. So show of hands. Do you think we should never let anything get in the way of helping people follow after Jesus? We'll do that together too. 20 years ago, this week, a dedicated group of 50 people launched a church, a work that many of us, all of us, are still benefiting from, still enjoying, still being challenged and helped by. So my question to you as we end is, what if we did that again, but this time the launch team wasn't 50 people? What if we did it again, but this time the launch team was 500 people or 1,000 people? I mean, how many people could God help over the next 20 years if we committed to do that work together? if we committed to love people together, committed to pray together, give together, serve together, what would happen if we locked our arms together and committed that the next 20 years was going to be better than the last? If we committed to never let WellSpring be about one person, but it's about all of us, about God among us. What if we committed to never let anything, not time, sacrifice, budget, nothing ever stands in the way of helping yet another person follow after Jesus? If this became the launch team, heaven only knows what that would look like. And I look forward to being the grumpy old man in the booth, seeing that together 20 years from now. Why don't you bow your head? Let me pray for you. God, I am grateful. I am grateful that you let each of us, starting with me, undeserving as we are, to go on the ride with you, to reach people and serve people and love people in your name. And God, I can't hardly get my words straight just now from the pictures I just saw. And I'm grateful. It's your goodness. So God, I pray that even today, if there's those among us who have been searching for you, those among us who didn't think they were searching for you, those among us who realize that life with your son Jesus is better than life without him, that today would be more than just an anniversary looking back for us. Today would be a day about starting a new creation in one of your kids. And I would love to put an exclamation point on today by someone who's been with us a long time, or maybe just today, acknowledging that your son is God. And that he died not just for the world, he died for them. And that he rose again from the dead, defeating death and the grave, so that we could all have access to your throne in heaven. And even talk to you now, and you listen. I pray that would be true today. I'm grateful for your goodness, God. We celebrate your goodness today. You have done marvelous things in our eyes. We pray in the name of Jesus.